Okay, no, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is probably not the last good MCU movie. At least I wouldn't bet money on it, so sorry for the subtle clickbait. But I do think this film marks an important point in the continuity of this franchise because many people are starting to get tired of the current formula that Disney and Marvel have in place, myself being one of those people. But more on that later. First, let's just talk about how great this movie is because I think this might be one of the best entries into the MCU. I'll acknowledge the strong recency bias when I say this, but from what the MCU has to offer, Guardians 3 might be my personal favorite. This is a prime example of the potential that the MCU has. As you would expect from James Gunn, there is great action, a great soundtrack, with one standout scene involving a Beastie Boys needle drop. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It's generally funny and the performances are great, particularly one of them being Chukwudi Iwuji, who plays the High Evolutionary. I'm probably butchering that name, so I'll just refer to him as Chuck since I found an interview where he seemed to be cool with that.
Now, they told me I could call you Chuck.
You could call me Chuck, yes.
Okay.
Regardless, he killed it in this role despite his character being somewhat underdeveloped on paper. He's basically just this guy with a creationist god complex, and there's not much apart from that, but Chuck's performance brings so much energy to the film and his commitment to the part is super admirable, so kudos to him. Hopefully this film can be an even bigger launch pad for his career. With that being said, this film is also really emotionally effective, even if some might argue that it borders on being emotionally manipulative. This was something I briefly thought about during my viewing of the film because I mean, come on, it's a sad little raccoon. Yeah, people are gonna cry. I mean, shit, it almost got me. There's a plethora of moments that are hard not to resonate with. Really, I don't see the harm in it. Although I will say that the typical MCU blemishes show up here with a couple of moments that are nearly ruined by the insertion of humor into an otherwise emotional scene. Tonal inconsistency is something that has plagued the MCU, and it's not a huge surprise that it creeps into Volume 3, but I can forgive it. It's not really as much of a problem when compared to other entries into the franchise. After all, the witty quips that the MCU is known for at this point sort of originate from the Guardians. Overall, it's a fun movie. I think it's well paced. James Gunn is very good at maintaining the momentum in his films. With this ensemble cast, he finds a way to balance the character's importance to the script pretty consistently, resulting in a plot that doesn't move too slow or too fast. I'm not saying it's perfect from front to back because there are some things that get left to the wayside a bit, but at the end of the day, you can only negotiate so much runtime with these films. I know some people won't agree with me on this, but in a perfect world, the film could have been a little bit longer to further explore the dynamics between one or two other characters. Perhaps this will be resolved with further appearances in other films. Rocket essentially being the focal point of Volume 3 was the perfect choice nonetheless, I think. It's clear that James Gunn cares so much about what he does with this IP, and I have the utmost respect for him because of it. His insistence on putting the spotlight on characters that don't get the same love as, say, a Spider-Man or an Iron Man is what we've come to look forward to in each of his new films. This may be the last time we see him contribute to the MCU, and I would imagine that he'll be missed. So what does this mean for the MCU? To be honest, nothing too significant. This is very much a James Gunn film, and since he's gone, that's one less visionary on the Disney roster. I hate to rag on this franchise because that's kind of been the trend for the past year, and I think enough people have voiced their reasons as to why things have taken a dive. I will say, however, that I literally grew up alongside the MCU, so its regression has not been an enjoyable experience. And of course, it's always been kind of inconsistent. I think some tend to look back on the pre-Endgame era with those rose-colored glasses, but if we're being honest, there are a handful of stinkers from that time. It just so happens to be the case that it's even worse now, but for slightly different reasons. It's just a mess. Everything feels half-baked with the exception of this new Guardians film and maybe like one show. Despite the MCU's need to have an interconnectedness, it does not seem like everyone is on the same page. I thought the ending of Loki was going to have a much greater impact impact on everything, but it almost feels like it's been forgotten about. Now, I haven't seen Quantumania, so maybe there is some sort of through line there, but I don't really care to see it because I've just lost interest in keeping up with the new releases. You also have this odd lack of cohesion between Multiverse of Madness and No Way Home, and from what I understand, the release order of those two films changed. And for the other entries that aren't super dependent on having a connection to the greater continuity, there's really just been an overall dip in quality. Because of its poor reception, I didn't watch Thor: Love and Thunder until very recently, thinking it might have some importance to Guardians 3, which it really didn't, and it somehow ended up being worse than I thought it would be. I don't know what happened, I don't know what was going through Taika's head at the time, I don't know how much the studio interfered with that one, but holy shit, juxtaposed to Guardians 3, and it's just like, wow, it doesn't even hold a candle to that film. And I like Taika. I loved Jojo Rabbit, and I think the loudest criticisms have been directed towards the VFX and the CGI over the past couple years. And yeah, it's pretty bad, but I can sympathize with the fact that these VFX artists had to work through a global pandemic, and that is definitely going to hinder the productivity and the quality of outcome in regards to the visual effects. And I've kind of come around on this. I'm not going to be super doomer-brained about it, especially considering that Guardians 3 has proven that they can produce some really amazing visual effects. With a great mix of practical and CGI, it looks like it was a lot more meticulously crafted this time around. Look, the thing is, post-credit scenes, crossovers, and Easter eggs aren't as exciting anymore. Priority number one is writing a great script and getting a passionate director. Yeah, I know, easier said than done, but I think Kevin Feige and the gang need to just slow down a bit. And that's where a bit of my pessimism comes in, because that's probably not going to happen. Not when money is the most important factor to Disney, and not when pumping out the most product that you can is gonna help facilitate that. Guardians 3 is probably the last MCU movie I'm seeing in the theater for a while, because, you know, I'm on a bit of a budget and I'm not gonna watch every new movie that comes out, so I have to be a bit more selective, and honestly, I'm just a bit fatigued from the MCU extravaganza. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who share the same feelings as me. So is this the last good MCU movie? Probably not, but it's the last one that I was anticipating. And I guess outside of that, there's the Daredevil reboot that I'll have to check out because of my morbid curiosity, but that's about it. Shout out to James Gunn. I'm excited to see what he does with DC. And I promise I'm not a DC shill. I honestly couldn't care less which one of those are better than the other. That's for you to decide, and I really don't think about that shit. But thank you for watching. Was this video kind of pointless? Yeah, kind of, but I just felt like rambling. I'm always happy to read your thoughts in the comments, and you know what to do if you made it this far. Leave a like, subscribe, and all that other stuff. See you next time.